Thanks again for coming. I want to tell you today a bit about our latest project, which we did, one of our latest projects actually, where we did something which was new for me, so work with the Headless CMS, and I thought it might be interesting for you too. So we combined Magento, Hyvä theme, and Storyblok. About me, my name is Matthias. I'm CTO of LIMESODA, and if you want to know more, I have a personal website with a blog about Magento. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, you can of course reach out to me. And the presentation will be available online, so you also, of course, can take pictures, but you will also find it later on the web. So what are today's topics? First, I want to tell a bit about the background story. Why would you even do that? Like implement a Headless CMS, you have page builder, and you have old CMS and whatever. So why do we need that? Why did we do it in the first place? Then I will just shortly tell about Hyvä, which I think a lot of people here already know. Maybe who knows Hyvä? Yeah, okay, that's most of the people here. Who knows Storyblok? Okay, also quite a few. Yeah, then I will talk about merging the whole thing together, show some examples. So we don't have a live demo today because I'm doing it on not my laptop, and it's difficult enough to do it on my own laptop. So I thought let's do some slides, and maybe I can show something if somebody's interested in a call or something like that. And then just a short conclusion about the project. So how did we get here? The story is actually that we took over the maintenance of a Magento 2 shop. So another Austrian agency, Natural, approached us. They are doing a lot of strategy and design work and consulting, and they are also doing individual development, but they are not Magento. They are not a Magento agency. So they told us they have a client from Switzerland, ABC Dental, which is a company which sells equipment for dentists, but they also do like everything that a dentist does to run their office, and they are a big player in Switzerland. It's quite an interesting concept because they also do like the maintenance of the instruments and stuff like that. So you can buy everything in the shop, from the gloves and stuff like that, up to the big chairs, which costs more than a nice car. Actually, how I learned, and they also do the maintenance for all these things, and they have their own technicians, and they have a very good service. So they said they have some special features which they want to build, and they have a nice strategy of transforming and digitalizing the company, and they would like to work with us for the Magento part. And yeah, they had some projects planned. First was like a big new B2B feature because they only sell to dentists, so it's B2B. Still Magento Open Source, by the way. And this will compromise features inside Magento, but also a custom web app for their technicians and salespeople. So it will be like a combined app inside and outside of Magento. Then they want to integrate the website into Magento, which at the point of time was HubSpot, but there were some limits to that. So they decided to put it into Magento. And it was on a bit of an older Magento version, so we had also to update. And of course, because it would be too easy, everything was in a pretty tight deadline, which was a hard deadline, as always. So they had there is the one big conference in Switzerland for dentists, and of course, they wanted to show everything there and launch it in time for that. So what to do? The challenge for us was that the timeline actually was too tight for neither Natural nor us to do everything within this time frame. So we had to figure out how can we do it quicker. Then the B2B feature will have functionality inside Magento, outside of Magento. And for the website, they desired to have many different content elements, which are sometimes a lot of work in page builder if you want to do it properly. And of course, what we as the programmers always say, we don't want to work with Luma if it's possible anyhow. So maybe we can also try to not build all the new functionality in Luma, but have a nicer spec for that. So what did we do? the first thing was we said if we want to finish everything within the timeline, then we will have to figure out how to do it faster. So we said maybe we can parallelize the work or share work between Natural and LIMESODA, and also Magento devs and non-Magento devs. So how to do that? We use agile methods for that and common tools. So we found out that actually our company it's like it's one company, everything from Jira to EasyJob to Slack to whatever. We just used it. Every tool was the same. It was like, okay, cool. Yeah, so we know how everything works. Then Tailwind and CSS, Alpine.js is something they were also familiar with from their custom projects. So they know how to work with that, especially Tailwind. CSS was important in the part. And we said, okay, we will decouple the parts from Magento and from outside by using web APIs, because of course you just define upfront how the API will look, and then you can also work against mockups and stuff like mocks of the API and really start work easy by just providing some fake data before everything is implemented already. Yeah, for the implementation of the B2B feature, we said, yeah, common popular tech stack, so Tailwind, CSS, and Alpine.js in this case. And we will also share the design system. So we had just one design system, which means like how are the buttons looking, the titles, how does a content element look typically, which fonts, which font sizes, and what are the margins and stuff like that. So we could share one UI kit basically, and design a few critical screens, but the rest will be just follow the convention of this design system. And the advantages, if we use the same technologies with Tailwind and so on, we can share some of parts of the HTML and the CSS maybe. So for example, the app part for the technicians and stuff like that, which was outside of Magento, had the same basic look of the user interface like the B2B feature in Magento. So on the left side you have the menu and you have the same grid, and on the right side you have some flyout menu. So the functionality would be so similar that it's easy to share stuff if necessary. Yeah, REST API already mentioned. So Magento has a REST API, and also the custom web app, which is used for the technicians, also has a REST API, of course. And here, Hyvä helped us really a lot, because Tailwind and Alpine is just built in, and we could also build like the HTML outside of Magento already. So somebody who doesn't know Magento could already build these content elements. That's also the next part. So as long as we have some very basic rules how to design the whole thing, somebody who doesn't know Magento could design the project with Tailwind components, and somebody who doesn't know Magento also could implement the HTML templates, and we don't just need the Magento developer to wire up together the HTML template with the content which is provided by Magento. Another advantage is Storyblok in this case, because Storyblok doesn't care whatever technique you use. That's a nice thing. So Storyblok is like the content repository for all your data, for the CMS data, and how you implement it in the front end doesn't matter to Storyblok. So we could just pull the data from Storyblok and then format it with Tailwind and Alpine.js. Yeah, and just as I mentioned before, we don't want to build with Luma, so we said, okay, let's use Hyvä. And what we did was there is a fallback module for Hyvä where you could say certain routes are still using Luma. So this means like Hyvä by default says, okay, everything is Hyvä, but you can install a module which just where you can define routes which will be still rendered by Luma. And we inverted the thing, and we said we will create an allow list and only render these sites in Hyvä, which we already have re-implemented in Hyvä. So we could also gradually migrate things of the old store in Hyvä and just whitelist URLs one by one. So for example, we did it with the customer area, the complete customer area, also where this new feature, the B2B feature, is located. This all was confirmed to Hyvä. And we have some parts in the new shop with Hyvä already, but other parts are Luma, which is a little bit of duplicate overhead, but it's actually not so bad. So it was pretty easy to fake Luma into looking similar to the Hyvä theme. Good. What's Hyvä? So I will just quickly tell it because many of you already know it. So Hyvä is like a custom theme for Magento 2. It uses the same render logic. So you have your layout XML, which you already know. You have your block classes. The only thing that the Hyvä team did, they basically threw away everything which is the front-end part, like HTML and CSS and also the JavaScript functionality, and re-implemented everything, which is a lot of overhead if you do it the first time, but it's a nice thing that we didn't have to do it, but they do it. And they have some core principles on the website, and I think they live up to that. So the complexity is lower than normal Magento front-end stack. It's really a lot faster. So you find out that actually a lot of the slowness of Magento actually is also front-end rendering and not just like the backend stuff. Developer experience is really nice. So you have easy onboarding and you develop very quickly. And another thing is reduce dependencies. So Magento, of course, is the dependency, but besides that, there is not too much of that. Yeah, and you learn it quickly, as mentioned. There is a one-time license fee for that, 1,000 euros, but you get all the upgrades all the time, so you don't have additional cost for that. What's Storyblok? Storyblok is a headless CMS from a company in Austria, actually. So it was founded in Linz, I think. These are even 2 employees from Natural who founded it. By now, it's a pretty big company. They got big funding this year already. And how does it work? You do everything in Storyblok in their web application. So basically, it's like a SaaS. You don't run it on your own server. You have a login on their website, and there you put in the whole content. You start with the content types. So you could define basic content types like a web page or a FAQ page or blog post page. That's the content type. And then you create components which can be used within these pages. So a component could be like a headline, or it could be a text with an image, so text on one column and image on the other column. But you are free to define which kind of components there are. And then what's really nice is they have a visual editor. So it's a similar like you're in Page Builder or in WordPress, where you're pulling per drag and drop or per clicking, you add the blocks to that, and you then configure these blocks, the content blocks. And on the left side, you get a live preview. So I will show you in a minute how that looks. And this whole content is delivered via REST or GraphQL. So in this case, we use the REST API. I think GraphQL is pretty new still for them. And you pull this data into your shop when the page is rendered, and then you can design it, this integration in Magento, just how you want to do that. They have a lot of advanced features, which I don't want to go into deep today because we don't need it for the basic workings and also for this project, most of them. But you can nest components, so you can put another component into another component. So you can build really complex layouts with that. You can use workflows like different workflows of editing. You have a content editor, then you have some chief editor who releases these features and stuff like that. You can do content staging, so you can schedule content. You can use custom field types. Custom field type would be something where, for example, you create a special field type, for example, for Magento products. So this means you can implement your own field type, which pulls data from another source. You could say you want to have a component. The component is, what could I think of? Yeah, so it's maybe something like a product slider. Yeah, you make a component with a product slider. The product slider has a title. This is a text field, and then you could create another field type for the products, a list of products. In other CMS systems, you would have to provide a list of SKUs or product IDs, which you manually search in Magento, and then you put it into the input field in Storyblok. But here you can actually create API calls so that Storyblok knows how to get the product information from Magento, and then you could have like a selection of products with search for the SKU and product images and product titles and so on, so you can really integrate them well together. And they have like an own app system where you can create all kinds of apps for, or use also all kinds of apps within Storyblok. For example, multi-language is an app which you install inside or activate inside your Storyblok account. And they have like thousands, hundreds of apps already where you can extend the functionality of Storyblok itself. Prices are starting from 90 euros a month, so they have different tiers for SLAs and how many pages you can create and how many requests and how many users can use the service. But this is the basic stuff. Good. So how can we combine all of this together? There is a really nice module by Media Launch who does actually the heavy lifting for you. So I will also try. It's a little bit maybe difficult to explain it just with the slides, but I will try how it works. Yeah. When you call a page in Magento, then Magento goes through a routing process. So Magento is looking which page or which code should react to that URL. So it will ask, is there a URL rewrite? Like, is this a product page or category page? No. Okay. Is it a standard Magento CMS page? No. So if none of these match the URL route, then this module will jump in and will say, okay, for your URL, let's say about us, the URL is abcdental.ch/about us. Then it will take this URL slug and will send an API request to Storyblok. And we'll ask Storyblok, do you have a page with this URL? And then Storyblok will say, yes, maybe it will say this. It will say, yes, I have an URL about us, so I will return the data. If not, then just a normal Magento login continues. But if the route matches for Storyblok, then this module will jump in. And the module will create a basic block class for every content element in Storyblok. So you will get, just like in Magento, a series of blocks of maybe nested blocks, which are the same class. So there's like one basic class, block class in this module which is used. And then there is a simple convention which tells you how to name the HTML files for that. So there's a lot of convention. You don't have to customize a lot of code. It works really well out of the box. Then we have some helper methods for rendering the content of the WYSIWYG editor in Storyblok. And they have some helper methods for image transformation. So the images are also stored within Storyblok. And if you want to get these images, you can transform them. So you can define the format, the size. If there should be some, for example, if you have people in an image, you can have like a focus point and say, okay, this is like the important part of the image for a mobile view. If you only can show a part of the image, this is what you should focus on. And with this image transformation helper, you can provide these parameters to Storyblok to return the perfect image for your use case. Then we have caching inside, so it doesn't request Storyblok all the time. It will try to cache whenever possible. And Storyblok also uses a webhook to update the Magento, to clear the Magento cache. So if you update the page in Storyblok, then it will send a webhook URL request to Magento, and the cache will be cleared for that page. And another nice thing is the SEO consideration they did. So when Magento regenerates the Google sitemap, then it will also add the Storyblok pages to the Magento sitemap XML. This means it doesn't make a difference for Google if the page is built within the Magento CMS or within Storyblok. You will get the indexation right. Good. How does it look if I want to start my project? I want to try it. First, you go to Storyblok, you open up a free account, so you have a free tier, of course, for trying it, and then you create a space, which is a project. Then you install a Magento module into your Magento project, and then you configure a few things. In Storyblok, you get an API key. You put that API key into the Magento configuration. In Magento, you define a webhook secret so that not everybody can clear your cache, but only you can. So you generate some unique string in Magento, and then you tell Storyblok about that URL. And you also provide Storyblok with the webhook URL so that Storyblok knows what to call in Magento to clear the cache. And you, of course, define the webshop URLs in Storyblok. You put in the Magento webshop URL, so you can have like multiple environments. You can have your local working copy, you can have a test staging, QA, whatever environment in Storyblok, so you can enter them there. But then you create a Storyblok content type, like a page, and then you create a component like a headline. And then you create the first page in Storyblok, put in the headline component. Then you have entered the data into Storyblok. And then you tell Magento how to render this headline component. And basically that's it, which we will now, it's all very theoretical. But now I will show some screenshots and I hope that it will be clear how it works. If you have any questions, by the way, just interrupt me because I think it's a lot to process when you hear it without having seen it.
Questions in the chat.
Yes.
Katharina is asking, could you give an example of a good workflow? You have the same content in Storyblok, but would like to show it on a Magento test environment with custom development, but at the same time on production, which does not have the custom implementation yet.
Mm-hmm. So in Storyblok, you can publish and unpublish pages. So you could say you use an unpublished page until everything is ready, for example. And you can preview pages in any environment you want. So that's one way to do it. And then I think you could also work with roles to define where to show which content.
Okay, perfect. Then the other question would be, can you send webhooks to more than one consumer?
What's the consumer?
So if you have multiple instances, let's say you have two Magento instances or a staging and a production environment.
That's a good question, which I also asked. No. At the moment, there is like one webhook URL. So I think this is something which could be improved. For local development, it's what we did was actually to turn off like the page cache, for example, because with Hyvä, that's like the advantage. The page is fast enough. If you have like a load time of 100, 200 milliseconds, but with the other caches enabled, then you don't mind too much if you just reload the page. And you don't need this webhook URL actually.
Is there, may I ask another question? If you think about a content element like the footer and you want to share that, is there also a solution for what we call it a CMS block? And how would you retrieve that from Storyblok?
So you can also do that because every block has, you could create a special page like a footer page, for example, and only put in the content for that footer.
Okay, got it.
And then in the Magento layout XML, you could define a block, insert this block in the footer, and just provide this slug to the.
Like a block ID or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then this way you can integrate any content on any page, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so could we see something? I think that would be good because it's pretty abstract until now. So I hope you can see it in the back. This is the look of the Storyblok dashboard when you're logging. On the left side, we see the main menu points. So I just mentioned a few today, like the content is the thing where we have all these components and the page types, everything like that is managed in this content area and settings. You can define the API keys and the users and whatever. in the components, let me correct that. In the components, you have the definition of this content types and this components. So there I define which fields does a headline have and which kind of pages do I have. And in content, I create the actual pages. So it's like a object and like a class and the instantiation of the class as an object. If you are deaf. Let's have a look at an example. Here we have a list of components, some of them which we implemented. So this is, you can see here a banner gallery or one component which has a build or a video and a text. We made that configurable actually. So it's one content element, one component where you can decide if you want to have an image or a video. We have something which is a contact component or one single person. We have a header, we have an events component and stuff like that. I will show a few of them in a minute. But you can create, like, I think, hundreds or thousands of these components if you want with a small plan. So they allow you to do really many things if you want with that. Let's have a look at this example. Let's say this here. I can really show like that. It's a bit slow. So let's say we want to build this whole thing here and call it, I think, a header text. Is it called in this project because we have a headline and we have a text. How would we go about that? First, we create this component, which we call header text. If I click into this component, then I can define the fields. This is like a database table definition if you want. Yeah. So we say, okay, we want to have two different fields in this component. We want to have a title and we want to have a text. If I click into this fields, then I get, and the menu opens again. And here I can define some things. So I can define the type, which could be like a text or an asset, like an image. It could be a WYSIWYG field. It could be, like, I think there are 10 different things, so multiple options, type and other available types. Then I could put in information if this should be translatable. I could put in a number of maximum characters. I could put in a regex validation to make sure that only validate is entered. Then I can put in the display name and the description. This is more for the content editor so that the person knows what is this actually for a kind of element, why do we use it. I can put in a default value and they also take care of ref2lite for languages which need that. So in this case, I have two simple elements, two text fields without further validation. Good. So let's use this component within the page. So now we switched from this components tab where we define this kind of content type to the content where we actually enter content. Let's say we create this page about us, Yvonne's, and we want to add this headline text element. You already see here this on the left side is a live preview, and this is the nice thing. So let's say in this case we already created the page and we added this header text element, and I can just skip ahead one time to see how it looks when you edit the content. So this is in this case just a single line text field where I put in the title and the text. And the really nice thing is that you have the live reload on the left side. So how this works is that Storyblok includes your installation in an iframe. Of course, you have to take care of CSP, content security policy, because browsers normally don't allow the inclusion of an iframe anymore. But if you configure it correctly, then you can do that. And here you now can preview how your page will look with this element inserted. And as soon as you change the text, it will do a reload on the left. So it's like a continual reload. You don't have to click save most of the time. Sometimes you have, but normally it works with an automatic reload. So if you enter content, you directly see, or you change an option, for example, you can also put in feature toggles in your definition here on the right. And as soon as you change the content, you see it here. And on the top, we have the possibility to switch between environments. So if you now go from the live domain to your dev domain, then you can see directly if you implement a project in your system, how it will look in your local dev environment. Why does this work? It works because it's an iframe. So your browser is requesting actually the website, and the website and Magento then gets the content from Storyblok. How do they do that? They do that by including the iframe with special parameters. So there's a special preview route in the module, and this means that you can always have a look at the preview of the content, because with every reload in this editor, it will not render like the final public page, but it will always render the preview, which you're working on at this moment.
There is a short question.
Yes.
How do you handle content or blocks which should not display in a particular language?
How do you do that? So normally, what you would do in this case is that you decouple the pages. So you could say, you have different ways of implementing multi-language, and you could, or is it just a custom element? Sorry, or a complete page?
She was asking about content or blocks.
Content or blocks. Okay. So I think you could do two things. The one thing is you could create separate pages for separate languages. So say in German and in English, for example, you duplicate the content, but you remove some elements in one language. So this means you have to do duplicate work, because you will have to define the same elements in the same order for all elements which should be displayed on both pages. If you only want to do that maybe for a few elements, and most of the time the pages should look the same, then you could implement something like that in the field type and have a switch where you, for example, make a multi-select and define when you want to, for which languages you want to show that block, because that's a nice thing. This logic will land in Magento actually. So you could have a multi-select on the right side here and say which languages do you want to display this in, and then in your template you get the value for this multi-select and see if the language is the correct one.
Similar to the store view selector for content elements.
For example, yeah. If you really want to adjust for simple elements, you could do that. Yeah, that would be the way if you want to have like one structure for the pages in all languages, but only want to.
Then maybe compare it with the store code in Magento in the template then.
Yeah, for example, yeah.
Okay.
And again, if you make a custom field type, which gets the store view codes from Magento, then you also don't have to maintain the store view codes in Storyblok manually. So you see, it makes sense. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show you. So then the thing is, if you have let's say we didn't implement this content element yet here, then you get some good debug output from the media launch module. So it will be telling you that the template is missing. Media launch Storyblok story/header text HTML. So it's really easy to create new content types, because they do stuff like that by convention. If your element is called header text, then they search for a header text HTML. If you call it slider, then it will search for slider HTML. My colleague never worked with Magento before, and he directly said, as I told him, this is the directory where you put the stuff in, and he was like, okay, and he never asked again and just did it. Yeah. And all the data which is provided by Storyblok gets inserted into the data attribute from the block class. So all the data of Storyblok is just a get data call away, or a get title or get text call in the block template. And also in this case, again, even if you haven't worked with Magento before, it's really easy to find out how to get all the information you need to display it in the template. Yeah, that is just how they do it. So pretty simple. They put in the original template, which is missing. That's just the code for the debug output. And then they export the block get data call and format it so that you can see all this information here. Good. So now if I want to implement all these blocks, here is one example for the header text HTML file. So now the code here is very simplistic. You would like to escape HTML stuff, of course, in case somebody hacks into Storyblok and enters malicious content there. So you might want to make sure that nobody can use this for some XSS or stuff like that. But I think you get the idea. In this case, we get the title content and the text content, and if content was entered, then this block will be echoed. And basically that's it. So if you imagine you have your colleague already creating this whole content here, because that's the nice thing of Tailwind. If you have Tailwind, you use this utility classes and there are no conflicts. So somebody can just create anywhere any kind of HTML content element, provide you with the code, and you just copy paste it here, and then you replace the placeholders with the actual variable value, and that's it. So as soon as you have somebody like a HTML programmer providing you with the content, it's really easy work in most of the cases. And here, as you can see again, all of the templates are next to each other, so there is no guessing where do we put the template files or have some weird things going on. Yeah, and as soon as you save the template, and in this case you have to reload the page, then you see that the content is here. Another example, which is a little bit more complex as an second example. This block here is one component in Storyblok. How do we do it in this case? So we have, of course, the coordinates and stuff like that in the map. We have here a headline, let's call it like that, that you have a text field for the address, you have a telephone number, you have an email address. In this component, we call it header map, we defined exactly these fields. And by the way, that's another nice thing. We didn't do that. This did somebody from Natural who has a lot of experience with Storyblok, but not with Magento. So they just looked at the screens and said, okay, which kind of content do we need here? We need here to talk to the client. What do you want to customize? So maybe they don't want to call it contact anymore, but something else. Okay, they get a headline. They want to be able to put anything in here. Okay, they get a text field, and so on and so on. In the end, by the way, I think we didn't end up using this because the map is pulled from somewhere else, but you could do it like that. So you could pull in this data and then initialize the Google Map, what do you call it, embed object with this initial coordinates. But again, yeah, so you have one person who does the definition of the content. So which kind of fields do we know, which doesn't know Magento? Who can be anybody, it doesn't have to be a programmer, can be a project manager, for example. You have somebody who creates the HTML who doesn't know about Magento, just needs to know Tailwind and Alpine.js maybe if you have dynamic behavior. And then for the implementation of the actual template, so the varying of the Magento data with the HTML, you need somebody with really basic Magento knowledge in many cases. So it gets really easy to implement that stuff. Yeah, so this is how this code looks. Of course, a bit more optics, so a bit more code, and of course, the many utility classes in Tailwind, as long as you don't put them into reusable apply statements. But still, you see, it's just a lot of easy replacements of placeholders, the title, the text, we have the phone number, so email address, and so on. Here the coordinates, I think, I thought they were hard coded here, but that's not true. Okay, another block, another example. this contact block. So here the same thing. We have on the left an icon. So this icon should be replaceable. In this case, you can do that directly in Storyblok. So you could either use one of the already uploaded images or you upload a new one. We have one field for the title, das rufen Sie uns an. We have one field for the phone number, for the opening times. We have this text here definable. You could define a custom icon here. And then there is another collapsed content configuration tab down here. So that's the next thing which I didn't show yet. You could group all this content or these field types. You could put all these fields into separate tabs if you have many configuration fields, so that you don't just get one long list of configuration fields, but you could split it up. Another example is the team page. So if we look at this page, you see that we just have one single component, which is called Kontaktpersonen, contact persons. How is this working? This contact persons component has three fields. One field is the title, this one. Then we have the, sorry, I think I'm doing something with the mouse. So then we have one field for the text. And then we have a third field, and this is what I called a nested component before. So this field is actually a list of another component which we called contact person item. How do I edit something like that? If I click now on the contact person item, let's see on the first one, then I get the form for one of these fields. So I can add as many persons as I want here, because you could also define a maximum for that, and you could define which kind of components are allowed to in there. So you could also have like different component person items which have different properties or different fields. But in this case, we said, okay, we want only to have one kind of component which can be nested in this Kontaktperson component. And then you can add as many of these contact persons as you want. And again, you can upload a person, you can put in the name, and you can put in the job description. We kept it general because you can, of course, also use this kind of display for any other information if you have, for example, testimonials, and you want to show a happy dentist, then you can use this on another page, and it's not titled an employee or something like that. And how do you implement the code for something like that? So it's pretty small for you in the back here. I guess in the beginning, it's still the same as we always had it. The title is echoed, the text is echoed, and now we get to these nested components. There are two ways to do that. The first way would be to just echo the child HTML, because as I said, the media launch module creates a list of blocks, and if you nest components inside the other components, you get a lot of block classes. You can do that, and here echo get child HTML, and then all the child elements like this contact person items will be rendered separately. In this case, because we only need it in this one place, and it's a little bit more easy to get a picture how the whole page is rendered or how the whole component is rendered, we directly do it in here in this one template. And this works because, again, everything that you get from Storyblok is just one big JSON array, and in this case, one big PHP array. So you can say, just give me the items. That's the kind of the name of this block here. Get all of the items, and then we iterate over these items, which are the persons. And then you check the file, you get the information on the image, and here in this case, you have a transform image helper. So here we use it to get the image for this person 250 by 250. We lower the quality because it's not so thick. You can use a smaller image. We can ask for a WebP if the browser supports that. And here is also code for this focal point where you focus on the person in the image. And then you echo the name of the person and the description, like job description. And this is my last example, I think, because it's a bit different. So here we have a logo carousel, a slider with the brands in this shop. And as you can see on the right, it says you have not defined any schema for this block yet. Why is that? This block is provided by a third-party extension. I think it's an MSD extension, MSD guide, MSD brands, yeah, which was in the shop before. So the customer was happy with that. He wanted to use it, and it's not totally easily replaceable because it works in that way that you define the brands with the logo. You can create landing pages for these brands, and you can add the brand for every product, and then you get the nice filter logic, and you get an extra page with all the brands on the. You can also have a separate page with all the brands and stuff like that. So the customer didn't want to replace it, so we said, okay, let's see how we can integrate something like that. And because the whole logic and the whole data is already in Magento, actually I don't need to tell Storyblok anything about it. So I just said, okay, we create an empty logo carousel component so that the editor can decide where to put it. And then we let Magento do the whole render logic. And now the thing is, in this use case, that of course the MSD extension has their own block class. But this module will always create the same block class, which is a block class from Media Launch. So you cannot tell easily to use another block class for this element, at least by now. So what did I do? I used the view model here. So I created a custom view model, and this view model in the background initiates the MSD block class. I needed to do that because in this MSD module, there's some magic which they do when a block is created. They do some yada yada, pre-configuration loading, whatever. And so I had to do a few calls in the background so that I can get the data properly in to render the same way like MSD would do that. And in the end, because of that, I can now use this helper class which I created to echo the title and get the URL for the brands. So in the background, the code goes to the MSD module and gets it from there. And then we have the list of items which you can see here. So these are the actual brands. And down here below, we have the actual code where we render out these brands. But that's the way how you would do it if you implement some third-party module into that, where you need the block class from the third-party vendor. So how did it work out? So actually, it was easy and fun to use, to be honest, and it turned out to be really versatile. So we had a few situations where we said, okay, how do we do it? And then we found out, yeah, easy, okay. The media launch module is a really good starting point because they take care of the important parts already. And we just did a few things. I had to do a few fixes and a few additions, which are not yet in the module. I asked Javier Villanueva is the programmer, the CTO for Media Launch, who did the module, and asked him if he would be interested in having these contributions like with this language and stuff. And he didn't respond yet, but maybe we can. I didn't want to fork it yet and put it public like as an alternate module. So because he still maintains it, I think. So maybe we can also put some of the features in there. But if you want to work with that, then you can ask me if it's not available. Yeah. We will find a way. So what did we have to do for that? Our store uses subfolders for the languages, so I had to do some customization for that. Basically, it looks like that in Storyblok, we also use folders with the same name, but I also made it configurable. So we have a folder hierarchy in Storyblok for TE and FR for French. And we map it, so you can map it to the store views in Magento. I made that configurable and make it work with the subfolders. Then I had to implement the hreflang and alternate tags. And by the way, we use one of these apps. This is called the Dimensions app in Storyblok, which is a multi-language feature of Storyblok. But there are also, again, different ways to implement multi-language. I think you also have something built in by now. And another thing which I had to implement was a language switch. So if you switch the language, then it searches for the correct page with another slug in the other language. So it doesn't go from über uns, DE über uns to FR über uns, but to whatever über uns means in French. So I had French in school, but I didn't learn too much about it. So it will detect the correct page in the other language and fix the URL for that. Then I made configurable which page in Storyblok you want to use for the Magento homepage, because Magento homepage is like / and you cannot have a / page in Storyblok. So I made that configurable, which / should be asked for instead. Then we had to do a small fix for the compatibility with the Hyvä theme fallback module. And with the cache cleaning, there was also a small bug, which a colleague of mine fixed. Yeah, and of course, as always, in the end, happy end. Client was happy. We finished within a timeline, and they're happy about the whole solution. It works well, so I can definitely recommend it for projects. Do you have any questions?
Yes. Did you also implement forms with Storyblok?
No.
Or did you do that in Magento? Okay.
No, forms, not yet. That's a good question. I guess the question.
Can Storyblok do form design?
The question is what, you mean like a form builder?
Yes, something? For example.
Maybe there's an app for that.
Okay.
But you can create content types and you build your form by yourself, for example.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Solution.
Yeah, that's right.
How fast is the REST API or the API of Storyblok? I've had some experiences. So
no. So for me, I didn't see a difference. I never thought about is this a CMS page or from Magento or from Hyvä, because we also had a few Magento CMS pages still. It's the same. It didn't matter if it's cached or uncached for me. So was within the time of 100 milliseconds for the whole page, I guess, because it's like.
In the chat.
Okay, so if nobody has questions, then thank you.
Thank you very much for the impressive.